Blackmagic have just announced 5 new products. We've got 2 new ATEMs, 2 new cameras, and even an ATEM microphone converter as well. And I thought I'd do a quick reaction video going through all of the products and sort of explaining some of their key features and some of the things that I think are really exciting within them. So we'll start off with the new ATEM Television Studio, and there's 2 variants of this, the ATEM Television Studio HD8 and the ATEM Television Studio HD8 ISO. And as we go through, I'll explain what the differences are between the two. So the first thing you'll notice looking at this picture here on their website is the look. You can kind of think of this as a model that has similar features, and if not a little bit more than, if I just go back to their product list here, the newer ATEM Mini, which is the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO. So if we look at that and go to the tech specs there, you'll see that has 8 SDI inputs. And similarly, if we go now to the new television studio, there's going to be a lot of scrolling in this video. Here we go. And go to the back and the tech specs of it. Here's a picture of it. We have 8 SDI inputs on there, as well as 8 SDI outputs, which are often used for return feeds to the cameras, but we'll talk more about those in a second. So I'm kind of seeing this new version of the brains of an ATEM SDI, but with the outside look of a traditional broadcast panel that Blackmagic have. They've quite clearly taken the look from a broadcast panel. So it's got all of the buttons that you could need on the front. And if we actually go and scroll through, we'll get a better look of what buttons are on there. Here we go. Here's a good look at the front of the new ATEM Television Studio HD8. This name is going to have to get used to. We've got obviously the preview and the program row here. Grant in the announcement video made a big point about saying the labels are all on LCD screens, as we're used to with the control panels as well. So they can be, the buttons can be remapped and they can be relabeled. And then obviously he showed off as well the shift key so that you can actually go through pages of different inputs. So you're not just tied to the 10 buttons that are here. You can actually then hold down shift and you've got access to a whole nother 10 inputs. So that's the bottom left hand side. Then this is new up at the top here. We've got the audio section, and they made a big point about having access to pretty much all of the audio functions within the ATEM's sort of audio console that you would expect to see on the ATEM software control, now available for tweaking and setting via physical buttons there. So yeah, there's a lot packed into this switcher, but it has that more traditional tactile feel compared to something like I have on my desk, like the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO or the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO. Some of the new features in here then, just taking a look at some of the notes that I made. Let's take a look at some of the actual back side of this first, and we can talk about ports. So if I remember rightly, there's a really nice picture. Yeah, here we go. You can just see how packed this is on the back with ports and what you've got. So both AC and DC power supply, so that's good. You've got redundant power in there. If one of those goes out, it will switch straight over. And obviously means with the DC power as well, there's battery power options for this too, which is nice. You also have a reference in and out as well, and the same for timecode in and out. And then what a lot of people have really liked about this announcement with this new ATEM Television Studio is you also have MADI in and out as well. So if I just flick to the tech spec page and we go and take a look at the audio, you can see here when we look at total inputs and outputs, as well as the 2 XLR balanced analog audio, we also have a 32 channels worth of inputs for digital MADI, and also up to 64 channels of MADI. Well, actually, you can use up to 50 of those at the same time, but you do have 64 channels of MADI digital audio out of the console as well. So a lot of options for bringing audio in and out of the ATEM. Let's just shoot back here because I want to get that back view of all the ports as we work our way through it. So that's that's MADI audio, and that is going to be extremely useful in those larger setups. Then you might not actually be able to see this, but if we just zoom in a little bit, 2 USBs on the back. So as we're used to with the ATEM mini lines or the extremes and the ATEM SDI lines, you've got the ability to plug in hard drives and record onto hard drive. And we'll talk also in a minute about other recording possibilities here, because that is one of the things I do love about this new model. But I'll talk about that in a second. So you can plug in SSDs and hard drives and record directly onto those. And as we also know, you can plug in direct via the USB to your computer, and then it will see it as a webcam. So you can plug in this new model as well and use it for things like your Zoom calls and stuff like that. The other thing, of course, you can do over the USB-C as well is use the ATEM software control over USB rather than doing it over Ethernet, although my preferred method is over Ethernet. And then talking about Ethernet, we actually have, and for my memory, this is the first ATEM switcher that has an Ethernet switch built into it, and that will become clear why in a second. So you've got a 4-port Ethernet switch built in there. You've also got RS422 control and talkback expansion as well, so you can plug traditional talkback systems into the back of this new ATEM Television Studio HD8. Then we come on to the inputs and outputs, and one of the first things that people said when they saw this during the announcement was, no HDMI inputs, because of course the old Television Studio had 4 HDMI and 4 SDI. But Grant made a point of saying, you know, people were becoming frustrated with having to buy converters when they were upgrading to sort of an SDI workflow and only having 4 SDI ports and then having to buy converters and things like that. So they've gone full SDI on this, both for the inputs and the outputs. So you've got 8 3G SDI inputs, which will support up to 1080p 60 frames per second. And also you've got 8 SDI outputs, which if you use Blackmagic cameras, that is how it gets all of the ancillary data to the cameras. So things like tally like, camera control, color grading, talkback, all comes down that return SDI cable. The other thing that they mentioned during the announcement was that now, for the first time ever, I believe, all 8 of these SDI inputs actually have audio mapping on them. So you can select whatever channels of audio you want to go down each SDI. And of course, each SDI output has 16 available channels of audio. And there's obviously going to be in the ATEM software control some sort of matrix system, so audio mapping, a matrix system for choosing what audio you want going out of what SDI. We haven't seen any screenshots of how that looks yet, but that would be a super useful feature for things like recording. You'd be able to say, right, I want to plug my SDI output number 1 into a hyperdeck, and then you could choose exactly what channels of audio you want recorded to these 16 channels on the hyperdeck. That's how I'm envisioning it working, and if it does work that way, that would be massively helpful and a great step in the right direction. So that would be a big win. So as I say, 8 inputs, 8 outputs, all 3G SDI. The other ports that you have there, you've got 2 aux outputs as well, so you can route anything to those aux outputs. And interestingly as well, it did look like from the screenshots that you were also able to route the multi-view to the aux outputs as well. With the bigger ATEMs and the new Constellation HD models, you can't actually route the multi-view to the auxes. They have separate multi-view SDI ports. This one, it does look like you can actually have the multi-view going out of the aux port. So that's another big win on this model as well. You've of course got a program output via SDI and a multi-view output via SDI. And as well, the only HDMI output on the back of this unit is a multi-view, which is nice because again, it means you don't need to go and buy a converter. You can just plug a HDMI monitor, a computer monitor, or a TV directly into this. So Blackmagic have thought about those things, and I think they've seen some of the feedback from things like the Constellation HD, which doesn't have an HDMI port for the multi-view. They've seen some of that feedback and included that within this model, which is a good sign. Sticking with audio as well, again, more feedback. They've given more options for audio outputs, especially with the new routing functionality. So now they've broken it out. They've actually got control room outs and studio outs, which means you can feed different things to those two rooms. So you can have a feed for your control room or your gallery, but also have speakers in your studio and send different things to there and route different audio from there. And you tying that in also with the talkback feature that is built into this device, you can even have things like push to talk to the studio or route different things to there as well, which is really handy. And they are both balanced, I believe. I'm just trying to find confirmation of that, but I think they're both balanced jack cables. And then you've got the balanced XLR audio on the right-hand side here as well. So you do have an XLR audio into the device as well. And you've also got stereo inputs as well. So regular phono inputs. And then you've got, finally on the back of here, a talkback connector, 5-pin talkback. So you can use a talkback or an aviation style headset for talkback with this unit. So that's all the ports. And there is a lot packed into the back of here. Let's talk about some of the features. So if we scroll up at the page, because it is full of them, and as I say, as you're going through this, if you're used to the ATEM mini line, the new ATEM SDI line as well, especially if you've got an extreme version of that, this will feel very similar because it is internally very similar to that, but it's more of a grown-up traditional broadcast style on the outside if we, again, just look at how that is. Now, it's a really nice design. It can be inset into a table as well, but I don't want to talk too much about the design. I want to actually get on to some of the features and some of the things that I really liked about this during. So what should we go with first? We've talked a little bit about audio. Let's see on... This is all the regular stuff that you would expect. You've still got 4 advanced chroma keys. You've got all the upstream and downstream keys, all the still stores, super source built into that as well. So you've got 8. All of the inputs are all standards converted, so you can plug any format in and it will automatically convert the standard of that video to whatever you set the output of the switcher to, so you don't have to worry about everything being in the same format. And yep, you obviously have the audio mixer in the software, but now as well you have full control using actual physical dials and buttons on the front of the switcher as well. And that's what we're seeing here on this page. You've actually got, if I just scroll up and show you the front of the mixer, again, this area here is the new audio control section, and that is what we're seeing down here, what that looks like in terms of the actual page. So we've got different pages that you can scroll through on the front of the mixer, the audio level controls, audio EQ controls, camera controls, and it's really nice. I think what they've designed this switcher to be is something that doesn't rely as heavily on the ATEM software control to make quick changes. In reality, you know, if I'm wanting to set up a parametric EQ on an audio channel, to first set it up, I'm probably going to do that in the ATEM software control anyway, because it's just going to be easier to do. But if I want to make small tweaks to levels or to the EQ during a show, then I totally get this. It totally makes sense to just do it quickly on a dial, just press a few buttons on the front and do it there, rather than having to mess around with plugging in the ATEM and diving into the certain areas in the ATEM software control. You've got the full 16 source multi-view as well, as we see in some of the bigger mixers, as well as the new Extremes. And of course, this does have recording and streaming capabilities built in. Now, for the regular ATEM Television Studio HD model, or the ATEM Television Studio HD8, it's what it's now called, you have the ability to record just the program output, but also stream the program output as well, as you're used to, again, as I say, with the ATEM mini line, let's say. The ATEM Television Studio HD8 ISO, these names are getting longer, gives you that 8 ISO recording ability as well. So you can record up to 9 streams, the program output and the 8 inputs as well. So you've got ISO recording, and it does all the same as we've seen with the minis and the ATEM SDI line in terms of creating a DaVinci project file for you as well. There are some other differences between the two models, and one of them, my favorite, I'm going to mention in just a second. You can stream over a mobile phone. So as I'm going through, you'll see a lot of these are very, very similar to what we've seen in other models. One of the first things that really kicks in here and excites me quite a lot with this model, and I think it's the first time we've seen it in any Blackmagic switcher, is the talk of internal storage. So it is going to be an additional option. If you are one of the first people to go and order this model, they're going to include as a gift 2 terabytes worth of internal storage for free. But it will be, if you don't make the cut as one of the people who have ordered in the very beginning, it will be an added paid extra as well, where you can have an M.2 flash drive or flash disk installed into the device. And you might say, why would I want to do that when I can just plug an external hard drive in? Again, it makes this into an all-in-one solution where you don't have to worry about bringing external hard drives. And I think that's what they're trying to do with this device. They're trying to bring everything in so that all you need to do is plonk it on a table when you arrive at your event or in your studio, whatever it may be, and you don't have to worry about all these external peripherals. And I think the one thing missing from them doing that is I wish this did have a video playout so that you didn't need to connect to Hyperdeck. That was the one thing I was hoping for on here, but we didn't see, because then I think it is very close to an all-in-one system. So anyway, back onto why the internal storage excites me is because for the first time, they've actually added the ability to essentially turn the ATEM Television Studio HD8 also into a Blackmagic cloud store. And if you don't know what a Blackmagic cloud store is, it's their network storage device in essence, and it allows you to put storage on your network. So in this case, what you can do is you can record directly onto the internal M.2 disk, so your 2 terabyte memory internally, if you've added that as an optional extra. And then as soon as you finish recording, you have access to that over the network. So you don't have to worry about pulling out drives and taking it to computers in different rooms, things like that. You've got access to it over the network. You can edit directly off of it over the network. Grant did a really good demo showing this operational, and he was editing in the DaVinci file over the network, and it's a 1 gig network, and it seemed to work pretty smooth. So yeah, this really excites me. The other thing, of course, by turning the switcher into a cloud store, the other benefit the cloud store gives is it also can be linked with services like Google Drive and Dropbox. So as soon as you finish recording on your switcher, as long as it's connected to the internet, it can be syncing that footage and syncing that DaVinci project file, if you've got the ISO version, up to the cloud, where then editors can download and start working on it almost immediately. So yeah, this was one of the things when Grant started talking about this feature, it clicked. I was like, this is a great idea. I'm so glad that they've implemented this in. What else have I got on my list here? So we've talked about MADI audio. We've talked about how the USBs can be used. It's got talkback. 3G SDI inputs up to 1080p 60, and you've got 8 of those. 2 AUXs. We've talked about audio mapping, control room and studio audio, cloud store built in, syncing to Dropbox. That's the main things on there. I made a little note to talk about the audio meters as well, but I've shown you that. And then we come on to this. And this was something that I've got to admit, didn't expect, but absolutely love. Now, everything I'm going to talk about here, I will say this is for the ATEM Television Studio HD8 ISO model only. So when I'm talking about remote cameras, only for the ISO model. But yeah, they brought in this feature and they're tying it to their 2 other new products that they've released, which we'll talk about in a second, called remote cameras. And essentially it means that you can use either an Ursa broadcast or the 2 new cameras that I'm going to talk about in a second, or I believe an ATEM Mini to stream directly into the ATEM Television Studio 8 HD8. Because what they've done is they've basically put 8 Blackmagic ATEM streaming bridges, which are the things that can receive an internet stream into, the streaming bridge can turn it into SDI or HDMI, but they put 8 of those into the actual mixer itself. So you can have 8 streams coming into the mixer and showing as 8 cameras over the internet. So they don't have to be locally connected cameras. They can now be cameras that are either on the same local network or even across the world and connecting over the internet. And when they showed this, I was really impressed. And even I think Grant even said, we don't know how people are going to use it yet, but it's just a really cool feature that we wanted to put in. So let me, as I'm talking about it, let me bring it up here so that I can show you a little bit of the demo, or at least some screenshots of what they've got on their website here. Wow, there's a lot of stuff as you scroll through. Here we go. So it says another exciting feature on the ATEM Television Studio HD ISO, it is specific to the ISO model, is that it can connect to remote cameras. So these can be the Ursa Broadcast G2, the new Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro G2, which we'll talk about in a second, and the Blackmagic Studio Camera 6K Pro can all stream in H.264 directly to the switcher. And you can see the little diagram there going from the 6K Pro over, in this case, they're sending it over a mobile signal, but it can go over Ethernet as well, because the cameras now have a streaming encoder built in and an Ethernet port built in, and it goes over the internet directly to the switcher. Also, if you're connected to a local network, then you simply connect your cameras to the same network that the ATEM Television Studio HD8 ISO is on, and they'll just see them. A bit like NDI, although it is all happening in H.264, so I would imagine there is going to be some sort of latency even over a local network. So this is really exciting. It opens up a lot of possibilities, and I'm keen, like Grant says, to see how this could be used, because I would imagine for things like news gathering and more in the traditional broadcast sense, this is going to be a really powerful tool. And I wonder if I can get the YouTube video up and just show you a bit of the UI of them demoing this. So if we go to Blackmagic Design, see if I can just get the demo video up here. So this was, we were demoing here the audio on the front of the device, and you can see it looks really nice on the table there. What I want to show is a bit of the UI where he sets the cameras up to basically replace the SDI ports on the back with remote cameras. So here we go, you can see it here. If we just pause this here. Now in the ATEM software control, what you're able to do is go to the sources page like you did before, but now there's this new remote source setup. And that is where you can generate, if we just skip back here, there we go. You can actually get your IP address and then add a source. So this is the IP address of the switcher. It's available on the network. And you can just keep adding a source. You can add up to 8 sources. And those sources are all cameras coming in over the internet. And it gives you a unique stream key. You can create that file, that settings file basically for the camera, and send that to your camera operator, and then they can load that onto the camera and start streaming directly into your vision mixer. And what I'm going to do is just speed this up a little bit to show you it working. So here's the part where, let me see if I can get it here. Yeah, here's the part where he replaced the camera 1 that was via SDI. You can see it here. It's currently via SDI, and there he's replacing it by the remote source here. And then if we scroll forward, that's where he imports the settings file, and then all he needed to do was start streaming on the camera. And if we can see that, it just pops up in the multi-view as if it was locally connected. And this demo was actually being streamed over an iPhone. So that camera in the top left that he's just moving there is just, you can see the iPhone on the desk there is streaming it at about 9 megabits per second over a 4G connection via an iPhone directly into the switcher. No other peripherals needed. And you can do that for 8 cameras. That's the bit that blew my mind. It's not just so you can bring in one camera, it's the fact that you can actually do a whole production on this. Now, what I think is interesting about this, and they didn't talk about this in general, but could this be used for multicam? And if so, are they doing anything clever with timecode? Because it is a two-way connection. They are sending things like tally light and ancillary data and camera control back to the camera, even over 3G and 4G. So over the internet, you're still getting tally light and camera control, but they're getting timecode data as well. So I do wonder if Blackmagic is doing anything clever to sync or frame sync those cameras when they're coming in over the local internet as well. I would imagine at this stage, they're probably not, which means multicam probably won't be in sync for this type of thing. But I would be very keen to get a unit and a couple of these cameras and test out, or if anyone is looking to get one of these, to test that theory out and see if they are doing anything clever internally to sync the cameras. So that's pretty much the basics of the switches. The difference between the two models, and I'll talk about pricing in a second, but the main difference between the two models is the ISO version has the ISO recording, so you get 9 recordings, the program output, and the 8 inputs, and those 8 inputs can be switched as well, as I say, from the physical SDIs or remote cameras, so you can choose what you're recording. And the other difference is the ISO version does enable that remote camera option. It's not available in the standard HD version. So now's a good time to talk about cameras. Let's go and have a look at those then. So those are the switches. If you've got any questions about those, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think of this. I'm sort of trying to go through as much as possible at pace because a lot was announced today. I'm going to try and do more detailed versions of this. So yeah, let's take a look at cameras then. This is the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro G2, and we also had the Blackmagic Studio Camera 6K Pro. We'll start with the 6K Pro because it's arguably the more exciting one. So the first big thing obviously is 6K. I believe they have put the same Super 35 sensor that is in the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K into the new Studio Camera body. So yeah, you've got a 6K Super 35 sensor with, yes, everybody, not MFT lenses, but EF lenses. So you can use your wide range of Canon photography lenses now for the Blackmagic Studio cameras as well. If you're used to the Blackmagic Studio Camera Pro, I know this says G2, but they've got rid of the original Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K and upgraded it to the G2, and I'll talk about the differences in a second. But if you're used to this, everything is very similar in terms of ports and stuff like that. So if you just go back to the 6K and we look at the side, you still have the 2 USBs for recording, you still have the 2 XLRs for bringing in external XLR audio, the TalkBack headset, the 3.5mm microphones for if you're plugging in cheaper microphones or shotgun microphones and things like that, and a 3.5mm headset for monitoring audio or TalkBack as well. On the other side, you've got HDMI output, 12G SDI as well. I believe it's 12G in that model, and a 10 gigabit Ethernet port for if you're wanting to do a full Ethernet workflow using the Blackmagic Studio Converter. And if you don't already know, the Blackmagic Studio Converter basically allows you to power the camera, send audio and video, send all the ancillary data, tally light, camera control, everything all down a Ethernet cable. So it means that you can have one camera running to your cable for everything, including power. So that's what that 10 gigabit Ethernet port on the side of the camera does here. And then you've got 12 volt DC power as well. And all the things you would expect from the studio camera. Now, some of the main key points of the 6K, as I say, you have if we go back to the 6K here, it's obviously shooting up to 6K. It has a Super 35 sensor. It has an EF lens mount for Canon lenses. It also has built-in ND filters. Let's see if we can get a little picture of that here. This is just the generic. Interesting. They've updated the homepage now to show all of the Canon lenses because it used to be all of the MFT, things like the Panasonic lenses as well. have we got a picture of the ND filters on the website? There we go, built-in ND filters. It's really cool. Grant actually demoed this, and you can see here on the diagram on the left, mechanical ND filters that actually rotate, and they can be controlled as well. If this is connected via the ATEM, you can control the ND filters from the ATEM as well. So there's a physical dial that can be used to increase the ND filter, which is nice. So you've got ND filters in that. And as I say, linking this to what we were just talking about with remote cameras, the other big thing in here was the live streaming. So it's actually got the ability to encode and live stream directly from the camera. No backpack needed or anything like that. You can stream both out of the Ethernet port and connect that up to the internet, I believe, or you can stream directly out of USB-C via a phone, so 3G, 4G, or if your mobile device has 5G, you'd be pretty good streaming over that as well, and stream that into something like an ATEM streaming bridge if you've got an older ATEM model, or if you do pick up the new ATEM Television Studio HD8 ISO, you can stream directly into that over the internet. Everything else pretty much seems the same on here. So you really are getting this camera for the upgraded sensor, the Canon EF mount, and the streaming capabilities built in are the main things. Which then brings me on to the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro, and the ND filters. 4K Pro G2, which has all of the same features, but 4K remains 4K and remains micro four thirds lens mount. So those are the only two differences between the two models. You are either going 4K or 6K, and you are either going MFT or EF, depending on which model you choose. So let's just go over all the prices before we do the final little thing, which they did as one more thing. You can see it here on the screen. If we look at the cameras first, the Studio Camera 4K Pro remains, it just replaces the original one. So the G2 remains at $1,865. No price increase on that. And they are available from today. And I believe will be shipping from today. The Studio Camera 6K Pro is $2,495. And then if we go, and that also, by the way, is available and shipping from today. And if we quickly go back to the ATEMs and have a look at those prices, the difference between those. And remember, considering an ATEM SDI Extreme ISO is $1,495, but you're getting this much bigger and more feature-rich switcher. You can see the prices on the screen there. The ATEM Television Studio HD8, the regular version, comes in at $2,995. The additional version, so the ISO version that gives you those ISO recordings, the DaVinci file, and the ability to bring in remote cameras is $1,000 more, $3,995. And then you might be able to, for the eagle eyes of you, note the one more thing, the new item here, which is the ATEM microphone converter. Pretty cool. I wasn't expecting this. I don't think anyone was really expecting this, but because the new ATEM Television Studio HD8 have MADI inputs, they've created this, the ATEM microphone converter, which allows you to bring in 4 microphones or line level XLR inputs and turn that into MADI and send it into any switcher that supports MADI digital audio input. And you can daisy chain these as well. So you could have 2 of these, which will then bring 8 digital input or 8 microphones or line level audio into your switcher via MADI as well. I won't go into this too much, but yeah, I believe they can be daisy chained, as it says here, up to 64 channels possibly. So you could daisy chain quite a few of these. But yeah, I'm interested to see how people will use these. Grant made a lot of noise and talked a lot about how high quality the analog inputs are in there. And you can see here 0.002% low distortion, a high dynamic range of 131 dBA. Yeah, I personally love the audio inputs on my studio camera. They are extremely low noise floor. You can see here negative 129. So I would imagine they've used the same that you got on the studio camera or similar in this new device as well. So just to kind of recap this, it will allow you to bring, or each box will allow you to bring 4 microphones you can plug in with, and it will provide phantom power if you need, or line level audio over XLR. Convert that to digital and send it out via an SDI cable, the same SDI cable that you're using for your video inputs, into a switcher that has a MADI input. And you can daisy chain these and have up to 64 inputs, I believe. So those are the 5 new products that Blackmagic have announced. Now, I realize I've skimmed over those as much as possible. I've tried to go into detail in the things that I think are important and some of the new features, but also I've done it quite quickly. So what I'm going to do is, it was just announced, I'm going to take it all in. I'm also going to try and get hold of some of these units and then bring the full detail, everything, my usual everything you need to know videos on this channel, and give you all of the information. For now, I just wanted to get the key stuff out to you. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. It really does help. Also, if you've got any questions about what you've seen in this video, if you're thinking about picking one of these up, let me know down in the comments below. I want to know your thoughts on these 5 new products. And if you're new here, of course, please do hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss those what you need to know videos when I bring out more detail on of these products. And if you need help with your setup, you can email me. On screen now is my email address. And yeah, you can email me. We'll set up a one-to-one consulting session and I can help you with your setup. Or if you've got more detailed questions about these things, pop me an email and we'll set up a one-to-one session. And once you've done all that, guys, I will see you on the next video.